everyone. Welcome to Artist Table Talk. My name is Catherine Marshburn. I'm a 12-year veteran in the music industry, specializing in artist and label partnerships, and host of today's show. I'm super excited to be talking today about AI, Music Industry 2.0 or Zero Day Threat. As an executive in the music industry and our guest Lynn Holland, an executive in the tech industry, we came together because we were really concerned about the AI in the music industry and how under-addressed it was. We were extremely concerned about the issues that are going to potentially affect music artists, their creativity, their personal data rights. And we wanted to investigate how AI is impacting the music industry, and we looked to drive a discussion within our industry about potential solutions. I'd like to introduce a good friend and an expert in the industry, Lynn Holland, who is a SaaS GTM, who helps SaaS technology startup founders get to market and achieve early revenue. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you, Catherine. My pleasure.
Hey, let's jump right in. This is such a hot topic. We've gotten so many personal messages on this. So what have you found so far for the uses of AI in corporate America pre-2023?
Yeah, it has been around longer than maybe we realize, and it's been used in a number of ways. I think all of us have seen it in the background in our social media as we've had the algorithms feeding us into our social feeds, things that would be relevant to us because it sees our behavior. It could be feeding us the next track as we're listening to music. In distribution, which is the software that I've sold, it was a key part of monitoring levels and scheduling replenishment. So it would help us to know how to do our work more efficiently in routing, in creating routes. It would condense down that route so that they had fewer miles traveled and a shorter day for the drivers. In manufacturing, it's been used to detect irregularities in production and be able to do it without taking a break or clocking out. And I think it was about 2020 that we started seeing the appearance of deep fakes. And it was really smart people that knew how to do code that did funny stuff. Like I watched a video of the Queen of England singing a Queen song and she was lip syncing it. So we have had this with us for a while. And I think there's been somewhat of a comfort level where corporate America has started adopting or had started to adopt renting software and allowing their data use. So it's been around a while and it's sort of seeped into the business culture, but then 2023 hit.
Yeah, I think I first experienced this whole concept as a non-tech person with ChatGPT. So I was wondering, since its introduction, how have kind of that ChatGPT increased? What do you think?
So AI, it has helped automate repetitive tasks. It's helped take people from doing low value work to focusing on income producing activities, increasing efficiency and accuracy. And it's allowed organizations to increase their capacity without adding more infrastructure. And we're seeing this explosion of it now infusing kind of everywhere, the softwares that we use. Microsoft has just published something called Algorithm of Thought, where it's like a GPT, but it's actually giving the AI steps in a decision-making process. Google just published something called Synth ID, where it is looking at an image and determining that it was AI generated and being able to watermark it. They also came out with their Google video conferencing capabilities to take notes, to create action items, to give recaps and clips of the best parts of a meeting. And they're moving towards other functionality with an attend for me feature where it will actually give you, these are the highlights you should talk about in this meeting. And Zoom is following suit with a similar technology. Walmart has something called My Assistant to do things with AI to eliminate repetitive tasks. The IRS, not to be undone, is also starting to implement this to where they can detect tax cheating and determine who should we audit. So all of this infusion into our software processes is perpetuating the use of our data to feed it, to have AI train the AI models. So data consumption and use is becoming so much more important.
Yeah, I don't know if I like the AI part where it's a decision-making asset. I'm not sure I'm really thrilled about that. In fact, that really scares me. So with that in mind, what implications, so good and bad, do you think might come of this?
Well, so the good side of it is what we talked about before, where we get efficiencies. As a business, we can operate doing more with less. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
But there's also some nefarious activities that we're starting to see. Things like AI being used to impersonate. And there was an instance of a woman that got a call from supposedly her daughter, and then there was a ransom demand. AI has been interviewed, or different AIs have been interviewed and asked, should humans be concerned about the use of AI? And there have been AI interviews where the AI says, yes, yeah, maybe you should. And the workforce is becoming uneasy, rightfully so, where there's, real implications for jobs. So we're starting to see some backlash. Some places where maybe we've heard of it would be Zoom was adopting or using people's data, and they faced steep backlash. And so they've adjusted their terms and conditions. Enterprise companies have started to go back to thinking about, do we really want to rent software and have our data out there in the cloud? And instead they're thinking about maybe we need to have an on-prem installation of whatever software we use and have our data only be used within our controlled environment. And to that point, ChatGPT has released an enterprise version to accomplish just that. So there's more safety in the use. And then you have somebody like an Elon Musk, that he, being part of the development of the technology, is at the same time now saying, hey, we need to slow up and we need to have oversight and governance. Interestingly, while he's saying that, Microsoft just laid off a team that their role was to teach their developers about responsible AI use. And I think it's just happening right now. The House Oversight Committee is now talking about the Fed's use of AI within their operations. So let me ask you this, Catherine. You're in the music industry. So how do you see AI starting to be used and the implications for that in that vertical?
Yeah, in music, we're seeing this massive rise in voice cloning and in fakes. Some examples that you might recognize are cloning of Frank Sinatra's voice, Johnny Cash, Tupac, Notorious B.I.G., and then, of course, with April, the huge blow up with the Drake and the Weeknd track, which had 15 million on TikTok and 600,000 streaming on Spotify. So, yeah, I would say we have some issues. We're also looking at some artists who are a little scared of it and are being very vocal about it, like Drake and Ice Cube, but some are embracing it. So, for example, Paul McCartney, he's used it to kind of isolate different band members, which I think is super cool. And then, of course, we have Grimes, Elon Musk's ex-girlfriend, who is really into doing some very provocative moves with a 50-50 revenue split on her voice cloning, which is so amazing. So everybody has a little bit of a different view on how it's going to affect the music industry. Um, what do you think a little bit, and we can talk a little bit on different softwares.
Yeah, I'd love to get your thought, again, from a music perspective about what is the technology that is being used to create these reproductions and fakes.
Of course, I'm just a music consumer over here. My specialty really is in the business side of the music, not so much the technical music side. But I jumped in and made a few accounts on different software. The first one I tested was Ava. It's spelled AIVA. I went onto the account, worked with some presets and a piano accompaniment. And again, this is like a third-party cloning platform. And by the way, if you Google it, you're going to find a ton. And that was scary in itself when I started diving in. And so in the account, I was able to make a piano accompaniment track. I could have layered strings if I knew how, if I knew what sound I wanted. And then I downloaded it for $9.99. So then I took that download, went over to another third party called Landr, LANDR. I was able to upload the accompaniment track. And I could record the lyrics of a song, let's say Alicia Keys, If I Ain't Got You. They have preset AI cloning, and I can only assume it's illegal. Taking that Alicia Keys voice that they must have stripped from Spotify or Apple Music and taught their AI her voice sound. They leveraged that against my lyrics. And then I was able to download it. And so from there, what someone would do illegally, in my opinion, create an ISRC code, and then upload it to Spotify or Apple Music.
That's stunning.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, that is a problem.
So when I think about that, like maybe you can help me out here. When I'm going to grab that Alicia Keys vocal, how are they getting around the copyright issues, like coming right off of Spotify, taking it? Yeah.
So in the research, it was kind of amusing almost how these companies are skirting the legality of it by it's sort of like doing something in plain sight. So they're putting within their terms for somebody to use the technology, explicitly saying you can't use unauthorized materials. You have to get permission if you're going to use anything copyrighted. You need to give credits to the source, and you need to mark it with, AI. But then they go on to say, for the person that's used unauthorized material to create their contraband version, they're now instructing that person to create their own guidelines for how their contraband material can be modified or repurposed, or be sure to ask that somebody give you credit, which is unbelievable. So it's really facilitating people, kind of like a don't ask, don't tell almost, which isn't an answer.
Like, it's so overwhelming for a label. Like, this is so much information and it's so complicated. I wonder if you've had a chance to look at what the majors are doing to try to protect their artist IP.
I went out and tried to look around because this is so pervasive, becoming pervasive. It's so concerning, what can be done in the industry. And so far, what I'm seeing is like a Universal, which has, such a huge part of the market share, where they are putting pressure on the streaming platforms and the social media sites to remove fakes. They're saying, we need to block song scraping. They're terminating access for people's libraries for offenders. Universal is also exploring a collaboration with Google that they want to create some sort of legitimate process for people to do use prior tracks and artists' works to create new creativity. And they're venturing with YouTube to bring together some artists with an incubator. And then we've got a Warner's Robert Kinkle, who's their CEO, and he's acknowledging publicly, putting out a PR statement that we hope that there'll be a framework to facilitate legitimate use. And We want artists to have a choice to opt in or opt out, but the reality is at this point, it's, PR statements and they're talking about it, but we're really not seeing any concrete solutions. So that being said, I think what we've concluded is this is a really complex issue, and the music is going to change hands multiple times throughout the industry. So Catherine, can you maybe talk on what is that, chain of custody throughout the industry to help us understand, how we come about a solution?
Right. So I appreciate you're diving deep into the label's responses, and I think it is so complicated and overwhelming. They're just really right now just kind of triaging. So usually an artist will come into the music scene either signing a major label agreement or as an indie. After that point, they write, create a song, produce it, and so forth. They'll go into compression with it, mix it, master it, attain an ISRC code either from the label or from a third party, and then upload it to Spotify, Apple Music for the world to hear. But now there's a part B. We're seeing people take that music, which we think illegally, taking the music, training AI to have the same voice sounds, and a music consumer like myself can go to a third party, and there's so many, like we said, and use that voice to create a new composition. But the scary part is that they're getting an ISRC code and they're re-uploading it. And that's really where I feel like along this way, there's some things that we can put into place. But this is the reason why you and I came together. We were concerned for the data rights for humanity, and in particular in the music vertical. And I've always felt like the music vertical really comes out hard and strong to protect their own. And a lot of industries, follow our lead. So that's why we wanted to dig in deep. And I encourage the industry to get into these discussions with us. We'll be doing some more talking on this subject, but we really want to help the music industry solve this. So Lynn, do you have some potential solutions that you might share with us? What do you think?
Absolutely. So we, in our research, really looked at, what was happening, what are the points in the industry that piece of music and those the opportunities for somebody to take hold of the music and use it nefariously. And so the ways that we found the industry can act, and again, it's not going to be one thing, but let's just talk through. There's several. The first that I would say is Robert Kinkle of Warner is suggesting that artists can opt in or opt out. And I really think that's not very realistic, because once the music has gotten out into the industry, it's going to get into the hands of technology. And so I really feel like the way that an artist can protect their craft, protect their creative, their likeness, is by if they're signed with a label, that they go to their label and they're putting language into their existing and future agreements on the use of any of their materials for any virtual AI machine learning consumption or use. And for an indie artist, it would be, again, them, putting the language into the sources that they're using to get their distribution out. So that would be the first thing. Another one would be, we mentioned Grimes, that Grimes has decided she's going to be the master of her own destiny. And so she's used a partner called ElfTech that is offering the ability for an artist to have a subscription, to have somebody submit a WAV file. It gets authorized and approved by her, and there's a monetization that ElfTech facilitates, so that the artist can ensure that they're going to get monetized and they can authorize the distribution. So that's a second option. Thirdly is that ISRC code that you mentioned, that when a track is being created, the user has to originate that music. So when they're taking possession of it, that I believe there needs to be a tokenization. So the track coming into that AI tool would then tokenize that piece of music, and it would then trigger for payment to be made to that artist. So it's not allowing the track to just come through the technology and then go out to the AI tool and then be redistributed, but it would be tokenized. So you would recognize the user and it would trigger a payment. And within that, we would also want for that ISRC code to reflect that it was an AI work. Yeah. How about from your perspective? Like, we came up with some other solutions. So talk about what you found.
I love all of those ideas. And again, to reiterate, it seems to be, for us, the most successful solution is a comprehensive approach, not just a let's put the obligation on, the streaming platforms to monitor this. We believe it's going to be a collaborative approach. And to that effect, how about watermarking? Watermarking has been around for a very long time, and there's actually sonic watermarking, right? So we can sonically go in after a little bit of research and incorporate microsounds into the track, and then later you can remove them. So in my mind, it's software like Pro Tools or in-studio software that's being used to record the music. That's possibly a way that we can start to sonically, watermark it. I also think that we need to look at each of the platforms. We'll probably have to update their style codes, and style codes among Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon are different ways that their metadata is received. They have a style code of how they like to receive it. And as you alluded, Lynn, I think just simply putting AI in the title, but requiring that legally to be, brought to our attention as meta might solve a lot of problems. And then finally, what about using AI to monitor AI? So in an auditing tool kind of a format, we have the ability to produce amazing data and reporting, not only from the streaming platforms, but also from these new third parties. Like, why put all the obligation on the streaming platforms when these third parties, if we're going to legitimately work with them, let's hold them accountable for reporting and take some of the burden, or just have an extra layer of, reporting data back for all of us. So in conclusion, we've looked at this issue with AI, we're super concerned. We believe the solutions are multifaceted. We believe it's a comprehensive, collaborative approach within the industry, and we want to encourage and provoke industry discussion to try to solve it so that we can really approach the AI usage within music and be effective. Hey, let's take some questions. Let's look up. Oh, hey, Michael Willis. Thank you so much, Michael. The question is, how can individuals and fans protect their personal data? What do you think, Lynn?
Yeah, this was so interesting as we did the research, and a couple of things. So my first thought was, as individuals, as we're interacting online and we're using softwares, I think it's a great idea for us to use a VPN. Less about us has a footprint online. Another thing that I did was actually listen to one of those AI interviews where a host cloned himself with AI. And one of the questions that he asked he named him Peter Bot, and he asked Peter Bot, how would you protect, or how should humans protect their data? And these were the suggestions that AI gave us. Number one, be vigilant in questioning information as you read things online, you hear things. Number two is, he said, be sure to fact check before you share information. So, we've all had that where, oops, back in the day where we would share something and then we'd find out that it was, the Snopes, this was not true. Thirdly was to educate ourselves on fakes and media literacy. And I think that's something that it's very new. So I think we just need to have an awareness to, as that gets talked about, to invest our time to educate on that, because it's just, there's not a lot out there, but as it comes out, I think we need to pay attention to that. Thirdly was to advocate for the ethical use of AI. So expressing our support as users, maybe holding our technology companies accountable. And the backlash that happened with Zoom came because SaaS technology developers were seeing that data was being used, and they raised that as a concern with Zoom. And, it was the public outcry. So I think all of us can take, ownership of how is our AI or our data being used. And then the last suggestion that AI gave to us is to support organizations that are working on authentication technology. And again, that's really new, but as that, is developed, I think for all of us just to put our antenna up and be thinking about it and taking, I think, better ownership of our data.
Lynn, I think that's our next ebook is, or discussion is, phishing examples, like how do we identify it, and an awareness campaign just on that one topic, I think would be huge, because you think so many people feel comfortable and are comfortable in the space, but they're not. We're diving so deep in it, but they really aren't. I think getting out there and talking about it, like we've said, we want to encourage and provoke a discussion on this to try to come up with comprehensive solutions. So, there's a question from Lisa Perry. Thank you, Lisa. In your opinion, who should be responsible and accountable for regulating AI technology in the music industry? Should it be the artists, AI developers, or regulatory bodies? Well, then I'll kick it off and then throw it back to you. So we have seen so far, as Lynn mentioned, a really large PR campaign from some of our majors, suggesting some solutions. And one of them has been to hold the streaming platforms as accountable for any AI tracks that are produced. And therefore, if they stream it, it will be their obligation, their responsibility to take it down. I would have to say that really is, today doesn't seem to be a reasonable ask. We feel like it's a collaborative effort among all parties. And to that effect, the artists, as Lynn said, in the recording agreements, if we can, Lynn, I just have to say something about Grimes. You have to give it to her. Here she is. She's very dedicated. I have a quote from her. She's super dedicated to AI and cloning, and she wants to be able to clone herself into the future. And one of her quotes was, "I'm very into accelerating human potential alongside with AI." We haven't really seen this in the music industry at all. We've had a lot of artists be vocal about it, mad that their that their voice is out there. But this kind of heralds back to Spotify, when we started to consider streaming as opposed to CDs and as opposed to hard goods for music. This is a very similar feeling that the industry had. They were nervous about streaming. They were scared about it. How were they going to get paid? We aren't suggesting that the IP not be monetized. We want it to be monetized. And so here Grimes is leading the way, saying, hey, you guys, here's my landing page. I'm going to give you my WAV files. All I ask is if you create AI, you return it to me, let me approve it. I'm going to stream it and do a 50-50 split with you. Let's talk about that. That's amazing. How about you, Lynn? What do you think?
So like we talked about, our first proposed solution is initiative on the artist's, side, where, they can flex their muscle with the legal requirement to it. If they did want to take the approach that Grimes has had, where, she's mastering her own destiny, I think those are great solutions. But, I really feel like the look to the label or look to rather the streaming platform that they're accountable is just not a realistic solution that everything flows through that AI serves as a solution tool. And so at that layer, that's where I believe that we really need to put a digitalized token onto that that work, that music, where anything that's done to it, that it's triggering an acknowledgement of the person that has it, and it's requiring for a payment to be made. And then also with that technology company, that they're needing to report on everything that's being, every time that a track is being touched, that they're then reporting on it. So I think that from a regulatory perspective, that's probably going to fall within, ISRC to be sort of the advisory or monitoring, because with that, they're able to prevent the fake from being presented as an original. And so I think back to the whole circular discussion, is our whole purpose in this was we realized nobody's going to be able to do it themselves. And it's unfair for one part of the industry to just look to another, and PR statements aren't getting it done. And so we really want to provoke the discussion to get multiple parties together in a room to talk through it. And these were our ideas to bring forward that discussion.
Thanks, Lynn. I agree with you 100%. Next question is from Work It Daily. Thank you, Work It Daily. What are some actionable steps the industry can take right now to make immediate change? Lynn, do you have any suggestions? And then I'll close out.
Yeah, I feel like of the things that we've talked about, that the artists taking initiative on their legal agreements, that's, first and foremost, making sure that they're going to get paid for the royalties. Second of all is the streaming platforms have the ability to control their integrations with these AI SaaS companies. So if at the time that a track is going from the streaming platform to an AI tool, that's where that tokenization and that trigger for payment happens. So I think that is an absolute must. And we then have that ISRC code where it has to be marked with, this is an AI produced or manipulated track. So I think those right there are like the most immediate things that the industry needs to dive into.
Right. I think that'll take platforms and different organizations just requiring those for them to play ball with their artists. And that'll be an easy fix once they decide to buy into it. But one thing you could do immediately, and the question was like, what could you immediately? You could, to be ethical, go ahead and title it AI. So like Spotify sees it coming at you. Let's just do the right thing. Like when no one's looking, let's just put AI in the title, and then we can kind of flag it and watch it. And, it's probably will be more of a beta thing. Who knows? Spotify might even push it to see what happens when we title it with AI. Anyway, really amazing to have you on, Lynn. Wow, I can think of 6 other spin-off conversations from this. This is so early in the game with that Drake track coming out in April, and the majors now really concerned about it. So more to come from you and I on the series of AI and music. And until next time, everybody, thanks for watching Artist Table Talk, and we'll see you soon. Bye.